Welcome to Charlottesville, Virginia. Continuing on our Virginia theme from last time out, where we looked at all the development going on in the state's capital of Richmond, I discovered that Charlottesville, the home of the University of Virginia, one of the top schools in America, as well as 45,000 people, also has quite a lot of new residential developments. That is further urbanizing what is already a particularly strong town, since Charlottesville is beautiful, walkable, and actually has a sense of place, community, and culture as a result of its superior urban design. At its heart is the downtown, which has the fully pedestrianized Main Street. Having a pedestrianized commercial corridor is a common feature in Europe, but is incredibly rare here in the States. This entire stretch of Main Street, plus some side streets of this small town, is one of the longest pedestrian malls in the United States ever since it was pedestrianized in 1978. And this has been greatly successful for Charlottesville, making it a popular tourist and local destination, offering restaurants, museums, and even an amphitheater, leaving you wondering why more US cities don't try doing this. And beyond the downtown mall, Charlottesville offers so much in terms of high-quality architecture, history, and pleasant walkable streets, with even the unpedestrianized stretches of Main Street still serving as an amazing high street and neighborhood center, especially when it goes through UVA on the west side of town. Overall, Charlottesville is just a great historic city. It may not have the sort of unbroken chain of beautiful classical developments that you would want in an ideal world, but it has far more than what 99% of this country has to offer, and regardless of architecture, provides one of the best pedestrian experiences in the country. And so it is great to see that Charlottesville does not want this high-quality historic core to act as a sort of isolated island that is completely surrounded by car-centric sprawl, as is the case for most historic cities and towns in the country. But rather, Charlottesville has made and continues to make the effort, especially in the last decade or so, to develop in a way that is urbanist and keeps the population in and around the city center, in doing so, taking advantage of undeveloped and underutilized plots of land, filling in these crucial gaps wherever it can, as every city and town should be doing. And so, let's explore Charlottesville, go through their recent developments, what's currently under construction, and see what is to come in the future. Starting with the area that has seen the most development, we look towards the University of Virginia campus and its surroundings. One of the country's most prominent universities, having been founded by Thomas Jefferson in 1819, is home to a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the form of its academical village, with its iconic columned arcade quad, meaning it has a high standard to live up to in its own development. And in recent years, the university has undergone some amazing changes. One major project was the Brandon Avenue Master Plan. This area right next to the heart of campus was once just a bunch of parking lots and low-lying, poorly aging buildings. But the master plan has completely upgraded this area. Now Brandon Avenue is one of the most built-up parts of campus, with these new buildings that have replaced almost all the surface parking and fully utilized this space. Beyond just the buildings, which, while they don't have a perfectly classical design, do use high-quality materials and are, let's say, loosely inspired by the architecture of the region, which is better than what you get in 90% of university renovations in this country. But the real win here is in the landscaping. This area was once quintessentially car-centric with its roads, parking lots, and narrow sidewalks, but now Brandon Avenue is a pedestrian haven, with wide walkways, brick pavement, a plaza to hang out in, bike parking, and more. Truly a night and day difference. Right across the street from Brandon Avenue is Cobb Hall, which has stood for over a century with its beautiful front facade. Don't worry, Cobb Hall isn't going anywhere, or at least this part of it isn't, as the backside of Cobb Hall never quite lived up to the front. But this has been completely renovated and is now the brand new Shumway Hall, which looks absolutely stunning and is a definite improvement in both land use and architectural prowess. Shumway Hall on one side has a much more impressive street-side facade, but on the inside, this mini plaza it shares with Cobb Hall is just breathtaking. And on the west side, what was formerly an asphalt road, leading into an unwelcoming back alley of campus, has now also gone through an extreme makeover as part of this project, and is now a pedestrian hub with even more beautiful architecture to marvel at. Truly an outstanding project. Down the street from there is the Woodrow Apartments, which while certainly having some charm to them, are also underutilizing this land near the heart of campus, with its ample surface parking and low-lying structures. And while the charm of these buildings is unfortunately going to be long gone, what comes in its place will inarguably better utilize this land than the surface parking lots that came before it, that being the towering Verve Charlottesville Apartments. With its mighty 12 stories across multiple buildings, the project will have 463 units and a total at 1,332 beds. and includes a 2-story fitness and wellness center, an outdoor fitness lawn, a lounge, study spaces, club room, a multi-sport game simulator, a dog spa and park, and a pool terrace. A monumental development happening right next to the university that adds tons of density. I think that they probably went a little too far with this one, but you can't help but be impressed by the ambition. Looks like student housing won't be too much of an issue once this project is completed in 2027. But the northern end of campus, around the athletic center, sees 3 more projects that are currently under construction. The first is the Emmett Ivy Corridor, which formerly, sort of like Brandon Avenue, was a series of low-lying buildings, surface parking, and wasn't pedestrian-friendly at all. But now the whole area is being replaced by the new pedestrian center corridor with new large campus buildings, completely redefining this area. These buildings are certainly modernist in style, even if they all maintain the red brick theme, which is a bit of a shame, but it's still an improvement over the mid-20th century slop that was there previously. Included is the already completed Data Science Center, a Center for the Arts, a greenway featuring a creek that leads to this pond that is surrounded by outdoor seating, which is a pretty neat feature, and more student housing. Under construction, for example, is the 10-story, 231-unit Bluemont Ivy on the western end of the corridor. Not all the designs have been finalized yet, but the vision so far looks quite bold. Near the Frank McHugh Center, a training facility for the UVA sports teams is being expanded into a space formerly occupied with surface parking to include an Olympic sports center, including more amenities for athletes and the school's teams, as well as this nice little plaza. And just down the street from there was the Copley Hill Apartments, another mid-century car-centric low-lying apartment complex that wasn't connected to the street and didn't utilize its land particularly well. So what's replacing it? A parking garage. Yes, very exciting. The structure will also serve as a transit hub in general, as it includes a bus station, bike parking, and a large pedestrian walkway, becoming the mobility hub of this athletic area, which over the last decade or so has undergone a lot of changes, with new stadiums and facilities I didn't even mention. But now it's time to go back towards downtown Charlottesville, in this sort of gateway area between the University of Virginia campus and historic downtown along Main Street. This was once your typical boring stroad with tons of asphalt and ugly buildings, but over the last decade has been built up to be an appropriate continuation of Main Street. This includes the 383-unit Lark on Main, the 384-unit The Flats at West Village, and the 661-bed The Standard, which is meant for student housing. Next door to that is this 1.6-acre lot of almost entirely surface parking, but it's been proposed to replace this with a 301-unit mixed-use building with a contemporary design. Now moving over to the neighborhood south and east of downtown, take a look at the 130-unit Belmont condo project, which is currently under construction less than half a mile away from downtown, replacing mostly undeveloped and industrial buildings. Low-hanging fruit that was primed to allow for increased densification right near the town center. Near there, on Water Street, are these really beautiful townhomes that were only recently built, which is right next to the 301-unit City Walk Apartments. But Water Street didn't even exist through this area until around 10 years ago, when the narrow street was laid out between the railroad tracks and these commercial lots, leaving just enough room for the apartment complex and the townhomes, making for a picturesque residential street within half a mile of the historic town center. How great is that? There's also the South First Street development, converting a dilapidated mid-century housing project into a more proper housing development, which will be 175 housing units, and the renderings actually look quite promising. Definitely an upgrade for these residents. Much of the same is going on at the 6th Street project, which has already seen the arrival of these new townhomes and this 150-unit apartment building. As for the rest of this massive project, there will be this new apartment building with this large courtyard green space, which, to be honest, is a design I'm not really a fan of, but let's see what happens over the next couple of years here. Downtown itself has seen a lot of new development, replacing surface parking or industrial spaces that are only a couple blocks away from the heart of Charlottesville, with new office buildings, adding more jobs to the town center, which is very important when it comes to urban development, as you'd rather have those jobs be here than in an office park in the middle of nowhere. This includes this new Hilton Hotel and these 2 new office buildings that include tech, law, and financial firms. Maybe not particularly beautiful, but these are still important developments. So there it is for now when it comes to Charlottesville. This town is on its way up, and in many ways quite literally. The historic charming city is starting to build very much vertically, with numerous large-scale residential and office buildings that would be fit for any major metropolitan urban center in this country. Verve is something that would be difficult to get built in LA, a city of 4 million people and ridiculously high housing demand, let alone a town of just 50,000. It's pretty crazy to see, and depending on where you fall on the urbanist spectrum, is either majorly concerning or supremely energizing. I fall somewhat in the middle. On one hand, densification of underutilized areas is the exact thing we want from our towns and cities, in order to counteract further sprawl and ridding of natural land, and at the expense of further thinned out resources when things such as roads, power, water, and services like police and fire are expensive enough. It's also positive to see new jobs come into downtown, making its economic integrity stronger and more diversified, and not relying as much on tourism or leisure. Most cities have a very hard time getting infill development done, and so to see this out of Charlottesville is really great. But of course, on the other hand, all these large-scale projects are ugly, which is bad enough, especially when the backdrop is a beautiful historical town. But also it's the fact that they're just so big. Verve, to use as an example once again, is going to tower like a behemoth over UVA, which may be tolerable if it were a beautiful classical building, but instead it's going to be square blocks stacked on top of each other. No layering, no order, no readability, pure repetition that ends abruptly when it feels like it. A lot of people in the beauty camp of urbanism like to say that no building should ever exceed 9 stories, and some go even lower than that. And while I don't think this necessarily has to be true, it depends on the context. The downtown of a large and bustling city, you'll probably have some tall buildings, and even ones that are absolutely beautiful. But in the middle of a college campus with mostly 3 to 4 story buildings in a town of just 50,000 people, probably not. A skinny tower, sure, if it's beautiful, but a building that takes up this much real estate? No way, it's just too big. I've said this on previous videos, I'd rather this project be half the size than have an equally sized project in another nearby spot that could also use some development. What makes for a better experience? One super tall building across from nothing, or 2 medium-sized buildings across from each other, and creating a proper urban space? There is something to be said about beggars not being choosers, but this still has to be said, because I genuinely do not think that the heart of the YIMBY movement that is making tidal waves in urban development across the country actually understand these classical city building principles. I mean, of course they don't. Just look at how ugly all these new buildings are. Sure, we all agree on some crucial points about urban sprawl, density, and the virtues of walkability and placemaking, but how we get there and what ultimately it is going to look like is widely different. And so it's very important to show people that it's not just pure NIMBY or YIMBY, but that there is a third way that is prudent, balanced, and rooted in truth. Whatever the case, I can ramble about this stuff all day. But while Charlottesville's more radical projects do deserve some criticism, in general, it is impressive to see this college town doing what it can to mitigate urban sprawl and develop on underutilized land in and around the city center, which is something that should be incentivized, but is rarely done in most US cities. So well done to Charlottesville, and as always, thank you for watching, I'll see you next time. And now a shout out to my incredible supporters on Patreon. Sven Weisbrod, Grandpa Allen, Ja Baptista, Ruben Hansen, James Whale, Michael Goldman, Joseph, Roach, Fortunate Calf, VJ Mari, Jerome Frolich, Nicholas Tobichuk, and my dad.